Welcome to this application building blocks session featuring Barista and BUI. In this session, we'll provide a means of escape for anyone feeling trapped in a CUI environment. You'll learn how you can enhance and improve a CUI application by sprinkling in modern functionality, and also how you can begin a stepwise migration from CUI to GUI by creating a hybrid environment. Next, we'll show you an example from AddonSoftware of how you can update and improve your application by taking advantage of what's available in BBj and Barista. Finally, you can see how Basis uses its own technology in combination with industry standard tools to improve customer service with its direct renew licensing. In this CUI to GUI presentation, we're going to hand you the keys you need to unlock and go free from your 80 by 24 world. Let me start by saying, look, we get it. While lots of our sessions focus on the latest BBj has to offer for graphical and web development, we know there are lots and lots of character apps out there. Many of them are real workhorses, the backbone of an enterprise. They're solid, they're stable, and they get the job done. Some of them have been developed and in operation over a span of years or even decades. If you work with such an app, odds are you aren't the original or only developer. If the code is standardized and well documented, you may be in great shape. But it may also be that you tiptoe into the code with great fear and trepidation whenever something goes wrong or you're tasked with implementing a new feature. And if your job is to hire developers or train end users, you face challenges there too. So, yeah, you might wish you could enter the GUI world, but where do you begin? There are a number of reasons you may be locked into a character app. Obviously, your real estate and what you can do with a character screen is limited, so it can be hard to add new features without looking to third-party solutions. You may also feel that you don't have the time or budget to undertake a GUI migration, especially if the application is one of those backbones I referred to earlier. We get it. And with BBj and Barista, we have the solution that can set you free. Whether you want to update the look, feel, and function of your CUI app, or take a stepwise approach to migrating your app to GUI with a hybrid environment, BBj and the Barista framework offer a low-risk solution, so you can move from CUI to GUI at your own pace. You have two basic options for beginning your CUI to GUI transition. The first is to keep running your character app, but modernize it by adding graphical functionality here and there, what we refer to as sprinkles. In this sort of environment, you're using the Barista framework, but it's in the background. You use BBj and Barista to add in the sprinkles, but you'll still launch and use the CUI app like you always have. Another approach is to set up a hybrid environment. Here, Barista plays a more prominent role. Users launch the Barista Multiple Document Interface, the MDI, and select their character screens from the Barista menu. In this mode, you can still add sprinkles to the character screens, and then you can also begin migrating some of those screens to Barista forms. You may eventually migrate everything to GUI, or you may decide to keep running some CUI screens. It's totally up to you. The point here is that you can do all of this at your own pace. You don't have to face a gigantic migration project, and your users don't have to face the go home from CUI on Friday and come back to GUI on Monday transition, which is always a blast for everyone involved. Whether you choose the modernization or migration approach, you can add sprinkles to your CUI screens in the form of Barista queries, giving you not only more real estate to display lookup information, but also the ability to sort, search, filter, export, and drill down into your data. You can convert older style reports to use the dockout report system, or use Jasper reports for things like invoices or purchase orders where you want to include graphical components. You can also use BBj's dashboard widgets to present data that's easy to see and interpret. Basis makes use of both modernization and migration in our own AddonSoftware V6 Hybrid product. The V6 Hybrid was developed to give users of the older CUI add-on version 6 a way to migrate to the current version of Addon. One of the hallmarks of Addon has been and continues to be the ability to customize it. So there really is no one-size-fits-all conversion for moving from version 6 to the current version. The hybrid combines the current version of Addon with version 6. The accounts payable and general ledger modules run in the current version, and the other modules, inventory, sales orders, purchase orders, modules that are often customized, run in version 6. All of the tasks, whether CUI or GUI, run inside the Barista MDI and are launched from an integrated menu. The V6 hybrid also makes use of BBj triggers to reroute I/O between the modules as needed. I'm going to take you on a brief tour of the V6 hybrid, and as I do, remember that version 6 is a CUI app, much like some of those backbone or workhorse apps you all may be running. So as you watch what we've done here, don't think about Addon so much as your own app and how you may be able to start modernizing or migrating. The V6 hybrid runs within the MDI, and the menu is integrated so it launches both the GUI and CUI tasks. The accounts payable and general ledger modules are already migrated to run in the current Addon, so we'll see graphical forms when launching from these menus. The other modules aren't yet migrated, so they run the version 6 character screens. Remember though, even if we're working with a character screen, we can modernize it with sprinkles to give it added function. For example, here in the customer screen, we've replaced the character-based lookup with a Barista query. That gives us a big advantage right off the bat in terms of how much information we can display. The user can control which inquiry columns to view and in what order. And there are a host of other features, such as the ability to sort columns, search for specific records, use the filtering tool to construct and even save filters, and export the contents of the query grid in any of several formats. This invoice history inquiry used to display data in the CUI screen, which wasn't terribly easy to read and often meant flipping through multiple pages. That, too, has been replaced by a query that offers all of the features I just mentioned, plus the ability to drill into any invoice to see the item detail. Moving to the aging and sales summary, we still see a character display, but we've added a pie chart widget that gives us a picture of the customer's aging status that's much faster to interpret than the raw numbers. When it comes to reports, we'll look first at a report that hasn't been improved. It's a typical print at style report that goes directly to a printer, or the BBj print preview in this case so we can all see it. This type of report can be converted fairly quickly to use Barista's dockout system like we've done here for the aging report. We can launch from the same CUI front end, but the report is rendered as a PDF in the viewer. Not only can we do the obvious things like save or print a hard copy, but we can also send the document to the email queue, find text in the document, or even adjust column sizes or other report settings or output options. If you want to create documents that are more graphical, you can sprinkle those in too, as we've done here with the customer statements. We keep the CUI front end and replace the back end with a program that generates the statements using Jasper reports, and then gives us the option to automatically email the statements via the document queue. I mentioned earlier that the Addon V6 hybrid also makes use of triggers. It's worth a few minutes to understand how the hybrid uses them in the event your modernization or migration strategy should call for them too. The thing to remember here is that the Addon hybrid combines version 6 and the current version, with accounts payable and general ledger running in the current version. Not surprisingly, there have been lots of structural changes in the data tables since version 6. We needed to decide how to handle a situation where a version 6 task is reading from or writing data to the AP or GL tables. Take the purchasing module, for example. If I launch requisition entry, it's a version 6 task, reading mostly version 6 data files, but what if I want to do a vendor lookup? The vendor table is part of the AP module. This is where the trigger comes in. We have trigger code on the version 6 vendor table that will read the current vendor table instead. So when I do a lookup here, it's a traditional character-based lookup. What I'm actually seeing are the vendor names and addresses from the current vendor table. In a similar fashion, when any of the version 6 modules want to update the general ledger, we have trigger code to write to the current general ledger files instead. Having seen a hybrid in action, how can you start down this road of liberating your CUI app? Regardless of which approach you take, the first step is to move to BBj if you haven't already, and make sure your app runs smoothly. For Addon, that was really just a matter of running the keyword utility against the version 6 code. You'll also need to install Barista. Then, if you're going to modernize your CUI app, you'll create Barista file definitions for selected files, the ones you'll be accessing for your queries, reports, or widgets. If you want to start migrating your app, either from the start or after you've been running CUI with sprinkles, then you'll hook your CUI screens up to the Barista menu and change the menu entries as you replace each CUI screen with its new GUI counterpart. Let's take a look now at a CUI app where we've added some sprinkles. Unlike the previous demo, where we looked at the Addon v6 hybrid running within the Barista MDI, this character app runs with Barista in the background. Going first into employee maintenance, we see it looks like a pretty typical screen where we can page through or edit employee information, but we've updated it with some sprinkles. Similar to what we saw in the Addon hybrid, the lookup option launches a query that we built in Barista. In addition to the query features you've already seen, this query also has a saved filter, so with one click, we can see just the salaried employees from the cell phones department. And when I select a row in the query grid, the employee information is brought back to the CUI screen. We've added a widget to this screen too, so when I press the F4 key, I get a pie chart showing me the breakdown of employees by department. Finally, here's one you didn't see in the Addon hybrid. If I press F5, my CUI screen can launch a Barista GUI form. Now, in this case, it's a GUI version of this same employee table, but it could just as easily be any other form. Now let's see what we can do with the employee listing. We still have a CUI front end to collect user input, but rather than running a print-at style report, we've revised the report to use Barista's dockout system, giving us a PDF in the document viewer. And by the way, we're not limited to PDF output. We can use the Save As to create a different format, or the Output Selection dialog to save or even email in one of the supported formats. If I prefer, I can create and launch a Jasper report instead. Now, to address the burning question, how did we do that? I'll start in the File Explorer so we can look at the structure of things. There are two folders here. We have Barista, and then the CD Jazz folder that contains my CUI application programs and data, as well as the programs associated with our sprinkles. I'll bring up the program for the CUI employees screen. We've added a few lines here to handle the key presses, all going to new sections of code. What's noteworthy here is that the new code routines are pretty short. Here's the routine for our lookup query. We have some code here to get a hold of our Barista and Barista config paths, as well as our BBj home directory. Next, we create a name for the namespace variable we'll use to store the key for the selected query row, and we get the username and password. I'm using admin123, so I've just hard-coded it for this example. Now we construct a command line that we'll use to scall BBj. The important piece here is the program we're running. BAX launch task is a Barista program you can use when you want to run a Barista component like a query or a form from outside of the MDI. It takes care of setting the Barista environment for us. We'll tell it we want to launch a query and give it the query name, along with the name of the namespace variable it should use to give us back the selected record. Once we're back from the query, we retrieve the key for the employee record the user selected. Then we hop back to the routine to read and display that record. Sprinkling queries throughout a CUI app is one of the most popular and powerful ways to modernize, giving you a lot of functionality with very little code. The routine to launch a GUI form is similar. We again use BAX launch task, this time specifying that we want Barista to launch the form for the specified table definition. For our pie chart, we set up our command line to run a new BBj program. The employee widget code is based largely on dashboard and widget demo code that ships with BBj, so I'll just run through the pertinent bits. We start by creating the SQL command we want to execute, then feed that to the Barista utility class, which handles the query and returns a record set containing the various departments and corresponding employee accounts, which we load into vectors. We define and initialize our widget, then pass it our vectors to use for the dataset. Finally, we create a window to house the widget and set some callbacks so we can close it via the mouse or the keyboard. As for the reports, I want to show you some of the code for the dockout report. The nice thing about using dockout is that it's usually pretty straightforward to convert your current print-at style, columnar format reports to dockout without having to start from scratch. You can generally just modify your existing report code. Looking at the employee report, all of this initial code to draw the screen and gather the user's input is untouched. Down here, in the main processing loop, we're calling a new subroutine to initialize Barista's document object, and then here you can see how we convert from print-at to dockout. Rather than printing directly to the channel, we add the data for each row to a vector, called out in this case. Likewise, in the original heading routine, we're calling new subroutines to set up our report and column headings so we won't execute these print lines. Now here are our new subroutines. This is the code to initialize the document object, and here are the routines to add our column and report headings into the document object rather than printing them directly. Finally, when we've processed all the records, we pass our out vector containing all the row data to the document object and call the process method to let Barista take over. To recap here, our code no longer actually produces the report. Instead, we load the report data into the document object and pass the baton to Barista. Unlike the dockout, the Jasper report is, of course, a brand new report. I'm not going to get into the Jasper report itself right now. Basis offers both Jasper and Barista classes that you can take to learn more about working with Jaspers. But I will show you the code we launch from the menu. It starts out the same as the dockout version. It paints the screen and gets the user input. Then it instantiates the Jasper report, sets parameters for the user input and working directory, fills the report with our data, saves it as a PDF, then brings it up in a viewer window. All right, you've seen several ways to modernize a CUI app using Barista in the background, and we've also demonstrated that you can add these sprinkles without making large changes to your existing code base. And for this final demo, we'll see how it looks to begin migrating that CUI app. The main difference when taking the migration approach is that we log into and run within the Barista MDI and use Barista's menu to launch both our CUI and GUI tasks. As we develop new GUI counterparts to the CUI screens, we just change the menu to launch the new GUI task. And remember, we can still use sprinkles with any of our CUI screens. Our employee screen can still launch the lookup query, pie chart, and GUI form. Our dockout version of the employee report still uses the CUI front end, but now the viewer launches and stays within the MDI. For our Jasper version of the report, we've replaced the CUI front end with a Barista form to collect the user's input. And that viewer too now launches and stays in the MDI. There are loads of character apps in use out there. What I'm hoping you're beginning to see now is that you don't need to be confined to that 80 by 24 world. You can unlock your CUI app with the help of BBj and Barista. There's no need to wait. You can start now adding queries, reports, and widgets to your app. Whether you decide to add sprinkles to your GUI screens or bring Barista to the fore where you can add sprinkles and also begin a stepwise migration, BBj and Barista give you the file in the cake that you need to break free.
Hi everyone, my name is Lynn Collins and I am a software engineer here at BASIS, and this is the Leveraging the Technology Stack. BBj and Barista enhancements are immediately available to you and your applications that you are building using these tools. They can save developer and QA time with much less coding. More features, less work. I'm going to show you an example of this where Addon has taken advantage of the BBj Grid, the BBj Calendar widget, the BBj Color Chooser, and the Barista Options entry form. How Addon has leveraged the technology stack to improve its calendars. The GUI PO calendar, which you can see on this slide, was created with pipes and lines. It had a lot of back-end code to display everything on the screen in a calendar-like format, and you could only move through it using spacebar and arrow keys and things like that, which was okay for 1985, but it was definitely not intuitive. In version 2112 of Addon, we took advantage of the BBj and Barista enhancements to improve the calendars. The GUI PO calendar was better. It took advantage of the BBj Grid, but it was still labor and code intensive, and it behaved like a grid rather than like a calendar, especially in terms of the drag and drop. We had to engineer and code all the buttons and all the events for the buttons, and you had a pop-up menu to change the color of the days, and it was better, but it wasn't as good as it is now. Today, Addon takes advantage of the BBj Calendar widget, and the BBj Color Chooser, and the Barista Options entry form. The BBj Calendar widget gives us forward and back day and month buttons as part of the widget, so we didn't have to code all those buttons onto the form, and we didn't have to monitor all the events. That just happens for us now. There's no extra code or classes necessary to make it look like a calendar. That is just part of the BBj widget. Also makes use of the Barista Options entry form, which allows us to more easily define the window in the form and all of the fields. The core functionality of the purchase order calendar did not change when we started using the BBj Calendar widget. It still has different colors for days, although you can just single click now instead of a right click. And then we also have the month and week and day views, which came as a benefit of the BBj Calendar widget. So we can click and drag, set multiple days, and the users can set and save their own colors. Addon took advantage of the technology stack, the BBj and Barista tools, also for the shop floor calendar. Again, the GUI shop floor calendar was not intuitive, was drawn with pipes and lines, spacebar to move around, and it was actually even more complex than the PO calendar because we had to put on not only the date, but the hours of the day, and then you could choose which operation you were working on. But it was not intuitive, and you ran it all with the keyboard. This, then, is the GUI shop floor calendar, which was better. We took advantage of the BBj Grid, but still the drag and drop was not calendar-like, and it was even more complex, again, to code the shop floor calendar, even with the BBj Grid, because we had to split the hours and the dates in each little square, same as the PO calendar. We had to code for the buttons and all of the event handling. We had to add Java classes for it to behave like a calendar. And you could pick the operation and display the hours of the day that you allotted to that operation, but you could only edit it one operation at a time. The shop floor calendar now that take advantage of the BBj Calendar widget is the best. It saves code and labor and QA by using the BBj Calendar widget, the BBj Color Chooser, the Barista Options entry form. It behaves like a calendar. It handles all the buttons and the views for us, and additionally you can set and save all the colors that you would like for each operation, and even the color of the text. And then there are the month, week, day views, and you can drag and drop on this one too. In my add-on, I have hooked up the old version of the purchase order calendar, and this is what it looked like. This made use of the BBj grid, which allowed us to improve very much on the CUI version, but we had to code all the buttons, all the events. We had to bring in extra classes from Java to make it behave like a calendar. We had to code all of the supports to change the days like this. And it was better than the CUI version, certainly, but it still was not necessarily intuitive. Like the drag behaves like a grid rather than like a calendar. If we look at the current version of the purchase order calendar, you will see that the behavior is much better. All of the buttons and events going forward and backward in months and years are handled for us by the BBj calendar widget. The change of the day type is now a single click rather than a right click, and it provides us with various other views that we did not have in the BBj grid version of the purchase order calendar. So if we look at the shop floor calendar, then again, I have hooked up the old version. You can see this was even more code behind the scenes to make this calendar work, because we had to separate the hours from the day, and we had to code all the buttons, and then we also had to code the drop down, which would allow you to change what operation you were looking at. And then you could individually change the hours of that operation on that particular day. The new shop floor calendar is much, much better. The BBj calendar widget allows us to take advantage of, again, all the forward and backward movement is all taken care of in the calendar widget. Now you can choose more than one operation and see them all on the same day. And each user can go in and pick their colors for each operation on the different days. So I can change the bike assembly to be a green, and then all my bike assemblies are green. There's a week view, and there's a day view, and there's a list view. And these are all part of the BBj calendar widget. We did not have to write any code to support that functionality. I can pick several days and change the hours for multiple days at a time. So you can see that the BBj calendar widget, and then also the BBj color chooser, which we use to take advantage of the different colors for the different operations, all gave us a much more functional calendar. And these BBj enhancements and Barista enhancements are available for you to use to make your calendars or whatever else look better. So the takeaway: use the Basis product suite, BBj, Barista, and Addon and your application to leverage the technology stack and take advantage of each and every enhancement that is offered immediately.
In this segment of our presentation, we'll take a look at Direct Renew, which is the custom web app at the heart of how Basis improved customer service using Basis technologies and industry standard tools. We'll look at each of the process steps of renewing software asset management contracts, rental licenses, and developer kit licenses from beginning to end, focusing on the tools used to build each step and lead into the next step. These steps include the delivery of an attractive and colorful HTML email with the goal of getting the customer's attention and guiding them through the renewal process. The email offers a customer a choice of using one of two custom web apps to complete the renewal: Direct Renew and BCommerce. If the customer does not take advantage of either of these options, a third option is a system-generated Proforma invoice for the contract renewal. On the back end, all financial transactions associated with the renewal are handled by our Addon 6.0 instance, which is a custom GUI version of our ERP. And finally, the general ledger implications are handled by our AddonSoftware instance, which is the Barista version of ERP, completing the process. The first step is the delivery to the customer of an emailed notice that their contract is nearing expiration. The goal is to send an attractive, colorful email which will lead the customer to the quickest renewal. We wanted to develop an HTML-based email using a tool that helps us create, maintain, and manage a library of boilerplate emails. We had the technology in our portfolio, the browser user interface, BUI, B-U-I, for the creation of web apps that respond to cascading style sheets, CSS, the BBj HTML viewer control for previewing the HTML, the BBj HTML edit control for editing the HTML, and BBj custom classes that would handle the replacement of tags in the boilerplate with actual data at runtime. So let's take a look. The HTML email editor is a BUI app that relies on CSS to give it a distinctive look. Down the left side are buttons that are built dynamically based on what's in the library. Let's take a look at the renewal email in English. These tags are replaced with actual data at runtime. The big green Renew Now button will take the user to the direct Renew app. The embedded BCommerce link will take the user to the BCommerce app. This is the standard SAM benefits segment, and these are the standard footer segments. Loading the main body of the email without segments allows us to enter edit mode. This panel allows us to edit the HTML in a rich text mode. This panel allows us to edit the HTML in a raw HTML mode. Once done editing, we can save the changes, which puts the HTML files into the pending library. The publish function publishes the changes to production and updates the library. We leverage the functionality of BUI, CSS, a BBj HTML view, and BBj HTML edit, along with BBj custom classes to assemble an HTML email editor for building boilerplate HTML emails, with tags to take actual data at runtime. The customer receives an attractive, colorful, and informative email, helping them move on to the best renewal path for their needs. Direct Renew is the powerful tool focused strictly on SAM, rental, and developer kit renewals. As noted previously, if the user clicks on the big green Renew Now button in the notice email, they are taken to the Direct Renew app. The embedded BCommerce link in that email took the user to BCommerce, which we will take a look at in the next section. Both the Direct Renew and BCommerce apps are customer-facing self-service applications available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. In the Direct Renew app, the customer can check the status of a serial number SAM contract. Is it nearing renewal? If not, when will it be renewing? Has a Proforma invoice been generated for the renewal? Where do I go now to complete the renewal? If a Proforma invoice has not been generated, I can generate my own invoice and renew the contract immediately. If a Proforma invoice has been created, I can add my purchase order number to the invoice and renew the contract immediately. I can pay the Proforma invoice or pay the invoice I created and renew the contract immediately. Taking any of these actions renews the contract and rolls the contract dates. Let's take a look. Once logged in, you can key in the serial number you wish to renew, or you can scan for the serial number. The system will fill in the form with information about the expiration date, end user connections, if any, the type of contract, and the number of users and pricing. If there are any special features, they would be displayed in the Features tab. The two list boxes at the bottom of the panel will tell you if there is an auto-generated invoice in the system for this serial number and provide instructions about your options. For this serial number, there are no auto-generated invoices as yet, and the instruction box is telling me that I can create an invoice with my own purchase order number, which will immediately renew the contract. Let's create an invoice and renew the contract. The system acknowledges the order and confirms that the contract has been renewed. It's showing me the new expiration date and the invoice number and amount of the generated invoice. And I now have the option of paying the invoice or waiting till the invoice comes due under the normal terms. Now I can clear the serial number and pull up other serial numbers if need be. I can search for open Proforma invoices as well, and in this case, there are none. In creating Direct Renew, we leveraged several basis technologies and some industry tools as well. We created the application to run in a BUI environment, used CSS to keep its consistent professional look. We used the Basis SQL engine to populate the grids and search for existing orders, and we used several Java classes to take care of processing credit cards for payment. The BCommerce embedded link in the notice email directs the user to the long-standing BCommerce web app, which supports a full range of transactions for Basis products. It can also be used to preemptively create a renewal order for a contract, or to pay an auto-generated order or an order created by the user. And like Direct Renew, the contract dates are rolled when a Proforma invoice is paid or when a renewal invoice is created by the user. Let's take a look. A renewal invoice can be created in BCommerce under the Add Users Upgrade button. Key in the serial number or scan for it. From there, you can access Direct Renew by linking out, or use the Renew button to create an invoice. You simply add your own PO number and create the invoice, and then add it to the cart. To pay invoices, use the account information and the invoices and access the invoice system through the Invoices button. BCommerce started out life as a GUI app and evolved into a BUI-only app. To use it, there is zero deployment. You simply need a URL to load the app. Part of the evolution from a GUI app to a BUI app was the application of CSS to maintain a consistent and distinctive look. If the customer misses the opportunity to create their own invoice in Direct Renew or BCommerce, the backup plan is an auto-generated Proforma invoice generated at a specific number of days before the expiration of the contract. Serial numbers can be flagged to auto-renew or not auto-renew in the BCommerce app by toggling it on or off at the customer's discretion. The auto-generated Proforma invoices will be automatically reversed after a grace period has elapsed following the expiration of the contract. Basis uses Jasper reports to render the invoices, and auto-renew Proforma invoices can be distinguished from other invoices by the purchase order number, which will be SAM Renew, RNT Renew, or DVK Renew. The backend for this process is a hybrid installation of Addon 6.0, a highly customized CUI ERP, and AddonSoftware, the Barista-based ERP application. All email expiration notices and auto-generated Proforma invoices come from Addon 6.0's database. When invoices are created and paid through Direct Renew or BCommerce, the sales orders table and cash receipts tables in Addon 6.0 handle the transactions. For all of the old Addon 6.0 old hands, the tables are ARE03, ARE13 for sales transactions, and ARE01 and ARE11 for cash receipts transactions. When the daily updates are run for sales and cash receipts, the daily detail records are written via an instead of write trigger on the GLT04 table in Addon 6.0 to the GLE daily detail table in AddonSoftware. Our hybrid installation of Addon 6.0 and AddonSoftware are kept in sync by the use of triggers. After write triggers keep the GL master file in sync between the two ERP apps. As just mentioned, the daily detail transactions are written from Addon 6.0 by the use of an instead of write trigger, which writes to the AddonSoftware's GLE daily detail table. Bank reconciliations are written to AddonSoftware bank rec tables via an after write on the Addon 6.0 bank rec tables. To summarize, the first step in this process is the expiration notices, which are emailed to customers as the first step. The email boilerplate for the HTML emails is maintained by the prototype HTML email editor. The email encourages customers to go to Direct Renew to self-serve their renewal, create an invoice, add a PO to a Proforma invoice, pay the invoice, and secondarily, the email encourages the customer to go to BCommerce to create their invoice or pay their invoice. The system will automatically generate a renewal invoice as a Proforma invoice when the early warning period is over. And when invoices are paid, these transactions are handled by Addon 6.0 in our hybrid system. The hybrid updates the Barista AddonSoftware general ledger via trigger functionality. The process depends on various basis technologies and industry tools working together to solve the problem. We utilize BUI, the browser user interface, CSS, cascading style sheets, SQL, structured query language, BBj HTML view and BBj HTML edit controls, BBj custom classes, Java classes, EM scheduled tasks that kick off the early warning notices and also kick off the auto generation invoice process. Jasper reports for rendering the invoices, CUI 6.0 for providing backend services to the process, triggers for moving data back into the Barista AddonSoftware and keeping those two ERP applications in sync. Our intent is to give the customer control of renewing their SAM, rent, and developer kits and contracts by providing access to self-service tools that never sleep, convenient and always accessible.
We hope this session has helped you see that no matter if you're in the CUI or GUI world, Basis technology offers a wide range of features, tools, and options for moving your application forward. You've seen how you can either modernize or upgrade a CUI application at your pace using BBj and Barista. With the revised purchase order and shop floor calendars, we showed you how Addon 2 keeps leveraging improvements in the technology stack. And you saw Basis's own Direct Renew application, combining BUI and other tools to improve customer service.